Today's video is sponsored by SimpliSafe. There is no safe like SimpliSafe. When the filthy rich son of one of the wealthiest men in all of Africa began to feel lonely and lost, he turned to religion. Slowly, mainly over the internet, he began to become radicalized and meet with multiple shady individuals. He decided that he would pull off a massive attack, an attack in which he would blow up his underwear while he was still in it. While making the kind of videos that I make, it's not hard to see why I might get a little bit concerned with home security. I've always wanted a way to better monitor my surroundings and get a bit tighter security, and that's where SimpliSafe came in. SimpliSafe offers comprehensive security for your whole home. It comes with all sorts of advanced cameras and sensors to detect everything from break-ins, to floods, to fires, and more. With its 24/7 professional monitoring, SimpliSafe agents are ready to respond and assess this situation at any time. They'll contact you and then even dispatch first responders even when you can't respond, just to keep you safe. It is award-winning home security. It was even named among the best home security systems of 2024 by the US News and World Report, and that's for a whole 5 years running. It was even ranked the best customer service of 2024 in home security by Newsweek, so you know they must have the situation handled. With your 24/7 LiveGuard protection, SimpliSafe's expert agents act within 5 seconds of receiving an alarm signal, rapidly assessing the situation and taking immediate steps to ensure your family's safety. With the smart alarm indoor camera, the agents can even see and speak to the intruders in real life, putting them on the spot and stopping them then and there. They can even confirm the emergency and give details to 911 to get a faster response. The kit comes with all sorts of gadgets, like the smart alarm camera, of course, and even a flood detector, temperature detector, door opening sensors, glass break sensors, and more. It isn't even hard to set up at all. I got it all done in less than 30 minutes. But if you want, they do offer a professional installation option for customers who want a little bit of expertise. Honestly, having all this tech and monitoring just makes me feel powerful. I've got the place totally locked down at any time from anywhere. SimpliSafe doesn't lock you into a long-term contract or charge hidden fees either. They earn your business by simply doing a good job and keeping you satisfied, not by locking you in. The professional monitoring plans can come in at less than $1 a day, which is less than half the cost of traditional home security systems. So why not give it a shot? Save 20% on your system and your first month is free when you sign up for Fast Protect monitoring at simplisafe.com/diretrip. And remember, there's no safe like SimpliSafe. Every once in a while we come across a case like this, and each and every time I have to censor out the names of certain organizations and crimes. They're kind of a hot button on YouTube, the kind that you're not allowed to talk about even in a factual sort of sense, even if you're speaking badly of them. So I'll try to get through this story telling it as clearly as possible. Well, let's get into it. Here we have the story of a man named Umar Farouk Abdul Muttalib out in Nigeria. Umar was from a very big family, the youngest of 16 children. His father was a man named Alhaji Umaru Muttalib, a filthy rich banker and businessman described as one of the richest men in all of Africa. He was even a chairman for the First Bank of Nigeria and formerly the Nigerian Federal Commissioner for Economic Development. Umar's father was able to put him through some pretty good schooling with all that cash. He attended the Essence International School for his main classes, but then attended the Rabitu Muttalib Institute for Arabic and Islamic Studies for the more religious aspect of his upbringing. All in all, he was seen as a pretty normal kid, a good student, and spent most of his time either playing basketball or on his PlayStation. It was when Umar entered into his teens that he really began to change. It was around this time that he started becoming more and more devoted to his religion, to the point where his peers began to show concern. He began to stop associating with his friends his age and began to chastise his father for his business. Given that interest, like banking interest, is forbidden in Islam, he constantly urged his father to quit his job. In 2001, Umar's class came to discuss the Taliban. His teacher said, "All the other Muslim kids thought that they were a bunch of nutters with beards and could not understand why they did such things as banning kite flying. But Umar seemed to think that was reasonable. Even when they blew up the Bamiyan statues, he thought that was right and proper." His teacher added that Umar was given the nickname the Pope while attending his school because he was so pious. However, Umar would grimace whenever he was called by this name, not liking the association with Catholicism. Still though, Umar continued his studies and went on to college, attending University London College in 2005, where he studied engineering and business finance. While in school, he became the president of the school's Islamic Society. Those who attended the school have said that most of their activities centered less around religion and more around protests against the United States and the United Kingdom. The club also participated in martial arts training and often went paintballing. Students felt that this was all in good fun until, on one paintballing trip, a preacher who attended the match continued to shout, "Dying while fighting jihad is one of the surest ways to paradise." It's unknown if this man was joking, given that the men were only playing paintball, or if he was actually trying to instill some sort of idea into them. In 2007, Umar organized what he called the War on Terror Week, a conference in which he got all sorts of politicians, human rights lawyers, and even former Guantanamo Bay detainees. One of the lectures during the conference was called Jihad versus Terrorism, which was described as a lecture on the Islamic position with respect to jihad. It was during these college years that Umar first popped up on the MI5's radar, the UK's counterintelligence and security agency. They found that he had created links with multiple radical extremists and commonly held communications with them. In June of 2008, he completed his studies and earned himself a degree in mechanical engineering. Soon after, he went to the American Embassy in London and applied for a multiple entry visa in order to enter the United States, which he received. That summer, he went to Houston, Texas to visit for a while. After graduating, he seemed to wander around, going from the UK to the US to his father's hometown of Kaduna in Nigeria. When he turned 21 years old, Umar told his parents that he wanted to get married, but they told him that they wouldn't allow it until he got his master's degree. So he seemed to get back on track for a short while, from January until July 2009, attending a Masters of International Business degree program at University of Wollongong in Dubai. However, soon after he bailed again, setting course back for the UK. This is where he said that he was going to attend a 6-month life coaching class, but as it turns out, this class didn't even exist. It seems that he was just making it up in order to get another student visa. So the UK Border Patrol Agency denied his entry request, and this got him put onto a watch list of sorts. Because of this, he wasn't allowed to enter the UK again for the foreseeable future, although he wasn't permanently banned. At this point, he was felt to be more of a fraudster than a national security risk. This is when Umar's life took a turn toward the chaotic. It's believed that during this period of wandering, after he was banned from the UK, a member of Al-Qaeda reached out to him and invited him out to Yemen for some training. Umar's father, thinking that he was going to the Sana'a Institute for the Arabic language in Yemen and nothing else, approved of his trip. Umar was the only African student in the whole school, but that wasn't what made him stick out. It was his habits and lifestyle that struck even those pious students as strange. He became a complete loner, started to wear only the most traditional religious clothing, and dipped out of class often. Umar would start his day by going to the mosque every single morning and then spend all night in his room reading the Quran over and over again. One of his teachers noted that he spent the last 10 days of Ramadan in the mosque refusing to leave. Saeed Kouachi, one of the attackers in the Charlie Hebdo attacks, was actually his neighbor around this time. Umar didn't even last at school for 1 month before he stopped attending, although he stayed in the country. Umar's family started getting pretty concerned when he called them to say that he dropped out of all of his classes in favor of going to a school called the Iman University, which was known by intelligence agencies for having ties to extremist organizations. One of his classmates at this school said that Umar told him, "My greatest wish was for Sharia and Islam to be the rule of law across the world." Eventually, Umar was provided with an exit visa to leave the country. However, he didn't show up for his flight and decided to hang around. Umar's father had hoped that he would go back to school in Dubai to get an MBA, but Umar called one day to tell him that that wasn't going to happen. Instead, he wanted to stay in Yemen and study Sharia and Arabic for 7 years. His father told him that he'd be cutting him off for good if he did that, saying that he was tired of giving him everything in life for free. So Umar clapped back and effectively said, "You can't fire me, I quit," saying that he disowned his family. To his credit, it wasn't all talk. The family did completely lose all contact with him. Umar overstayed his student visa in Yemen, eventually flew out to Ethiopia and then to Ghana. It was believed that he was meeting with all sorts of Al-Qaeda officials all over the place. It was around this time that a video surfaced showing Umar, along with a few other people, firing guns at several different politically themed targets such as the Star of David, the UK flag, and a big UN representing the United Nations. He said that he was doing this against, quote, "the Jews and the Christians and their agents." Shortly after, British intelligence officials were informing the United States that a man named Umar Farouk was speaking to Al-Qaeda, pledging his intent to perform jihad, but they didn't have his real last name. But then, Umar's own father spoke to a few CIA officers in Nigeria concerned with his son's extremist religious views, telling them that he believed his son was still in Yemen. As a result of these talks, the United States was able to add Umar's full name to a database consisting of potentially dangerous suspects. However, his American visa still wasn't revoked and he wasn't added to any no-fly lists. This was because the officials wanted to let things play out a little bit more and catch Umar in the act, hopefully finding some of his buddies in the process. The US government soon came across Umar's online posts after a bit of digging. He often used the username Farouk1986, posting to several different Islamic forums as well as Facebook. Going over all of his online activity proved that he was showing all of the hallmark signs of a man going down a very dangerous and destructive path. As far back as 2005, he was posting increasingly more extremist views relating to his religion. He started posting about his English soccer as well as his loneliness and his worries, which were notably some pretty first world problem type stuff given his extremely wealthy upbringing. Umar often spoke of his hopes to get married online, but his parents didn't want him to get married until he got that master's degree, so this only contributed to the loneliness he felt. Not only that, he was struggling to contain himself sexually and felt that marriage would have been the only acceptable outlet. While online, he would chew out any female users for being friends with men or not dressing modestly enough. In one post he wrote, "As I get lonely, the natural sex drive awakens and I struggle to control it, sometimes leading to minor sinful activities like not lowering the gaze in the presence of unveiled women. And this problem makes me want to get married to avoid getting aroused." Another post said, "The hair of a woman can easily arouse a man. The Prophet advised young men to fast if they can't get married, but it has not been helping me much and I seriously don't want to wait for years before I get married. But I am only 18. It would be difficult for me to get married due to social norms of getting to the late 20s when one has a degree, a job, a house, etc. before getting married. So usually my fantasies are about Islamic stuff. The bad part of it is sometimes the fantasies are a bit worldly rather than concentrating on the hereafter." However, over time, the posts got more and more angry, more hateful, and more fundamentalist. He expressed his interest in conquering the world and establishing a Muslim empire. For instance, one post read, "Alright, I won't go into too much details about my fantasy, but basically they are jihad fantasies. I imagine how the great jihad will take place, how the Muslims will win, inshallah, and rule the whole world, and establish the greatest empire once again." He was very interested in a man named Anwar al-Awlaki, an American Yemeni Muslim lecturer and religious leader. He was particularly active online, being called the Bin Laden of the internet, of all things. Umar had attended one of his lectures way back in 2005 and was a huge fan of his, searching him online often. Al-Awlaki was previously an imam in the United States with ties to 3 of the 9/11 hijackers. He also had connections to numerous other incidents, like the 2005 London bombings. Given that Al-Awlaki spoke fluent English, he was able to reach out to people from all sorts of different countries, and that's how he began speaking with Umar. It's believed that Al-Awlaki was trying to gain influence and use that influence to recruit more young men for new attacks all over the world. The two would remain in communication for about 3 months. During this time, Al-Awlaki offered Umar what he called his spiritual support. Over time, they spoke more and more. Al-Awlaki was hyping Umar up for an attack, and he was succeeding. Umar began to plan out what he was going to do, and he felt that a massive attack on a major airline would be the way to go. He then conspired with other Al-Qaeda members to get the job done. They wanted to blow up a plane over US soil, so naturally he decided that the best course of action would probably be to make some exploding underwear. He was able to get his hands on a 6-inch long packet of an explosive powder, which he then sewed into his briefs. The bomb contained PETN and TATP, which are 2 high-grade explosives. In order to detonate it, a syringe full of chemicals would have to be injected. On Christmas in 2009, he traveled from Ghana to Amsterdam. There he boarded the Northwest Airlines Flight 253, a flight that was heading to Detroit, Michigan in the United States. There he met with a contact who was able to help him get onto the plane in order to board without a passport. Umar spent a good 20 minutes in the toilet on this flight. It wasn't because of the in-flight food, it was because he was planning and scheming. Umar wanted to detonate the bomb as the flight was descending toward the airport, killing everyone on board and as many people as he could down below. He finally returned to his seat and covered himself in a blanket. Then he stuck the syringe into his man panties. It was then that some passengers around him noticed that something really stank. Then they heard some popping noises. Looking over, they could see that Umar's pants were on fire. Shortly after, the wall of the plane caught fire as well. A man named Jasper Scheringa, who was a Dutch film director, tackled Umar and held him down while a few flight attendants put out the fire. Umar was detained and taken up toward the front of the plane, where he told the attendants that he had an explosive device in his pocket, likely a bit embarrassed to tell them that he was wearing explosive-laced tighty-whities. When the plane landed at the Detroit Metropolitan Airport, Customs and Border Control agents quickly arrested Umar and turned him over to the FBI while they gathered some evidence against him and began their investigation. Umar told the FBI that he had been directed to do what he did by Al-Qaeda, saying that he got his boom briefs back in Yemen. Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, the organization's affiliate in Yemen, claimed responsibility for the attack shortly after. They said that it was in retaliation to the US activity against them in Yemen. For the time being, Umar was treated for some injuries he took during the incident. 2 days after the attack took place, Umar was released from the hospital. He was treated for burns to his hands and thigh, along with second-degree burns all over his genitals. He was then taken to be held at the Federal Correctional Institution, Milan, a federal prison in Michigan. Umar was all set to remain in the Fed's custody for quite some time. All over the media, he was being humiliated as the underwear bomber, the failed mass murderer who, instead of killing anyone, actually just caught his balls on fire and got beaten up by a Dutchman. The US had enough with al-Awlaki. In April of 2010, Barack Obama authorized his killing. Months later, in September of 2011, he was finally eradicated in a drone attack, bringing his reign of terror to an end. After Umar's attack, many people voiced their criticism, asking why he was even allowed to board the plane at all. A former FBI counterterrorism agent named Ali Soufan voiced his opinion that, quote, "the system should have been lighting up like a Christmas tree." Because of this attack, Umar actually caused the Guantanamo Bay detainees from Yemen to be held for even longer now that terrorist ties to the area were exposed and further investigation was needed. The Secretary General of Nigeria's Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs immediately condemned the attack right afterwards, saying, "We are embarrassed by this incident and we strongly condemn the alleged action by this young man. We do not think that there is any organized Islamic group in Nigeria that is inclined to such a criminal and violent act. We condemn such an extremist viewpoint and action." Several other Muslim organizations in the US and the UK also voiced their distaste in Umar's actions, saying that they are contrary to Islamic beliefs. Nigerians also worried that they would now be seen with suspicion, all thanks to Umar. Everyone wondered what the fate of the underwear bomber would be, and the trial eventually came around in October of 2011, a month after al-Awlaki died. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Security was very tight around the courthouse, given his connections. He started out in the court proceedings by screaming out that al-Awlaki was still alive. There was a short recess only for him to pull the same stunt again, screaming the same thing. He asked if he would be allowed to carry a Yemenese dagger in court, a symbol of power, something that was obviously refused. He showed up in only a white t-shirt and was asked to change, being given a sport coat to wear instead. He mostly remained silent during his court proceedings after that, with people saying that he seemed very serious. Umar was given a court-appointed defense team. In reality, Umar was facing multiple death sentences for attempting to use a weapon of mass destruction and the attempted murder of 289 people. A man named Anthony Chambers was appointed to act as his standby counsel. Eventually, Umar dismissed his court-appointed team and decided to represent himself against the advice of the court. On February 13, 2012, Umar's counsel, Anthony Chambers, filed a motion arguing that sentencing his client to life in prison would basically amount to cruel and unusual punishment under the 8th Amendment to the United States Constitution, saying that it was because nobody else suffered any harm during the attack. This motion was rejected. While Umar had cooperated with investigators at first, he soon stopped talking. His Miranda rights had been read to him, informing him that he did have the right to stay silent. This was met with a lot of criticism, as he wasn't a citizen of the United States in the first place, and people felt that he shouldn't have the same rights. It was also this reading that got him to stop talking in the first place. It wasn't until the FBI flew out a few of his family members from Nigeria that he finally started talking again. However, none of his family would go on to attend his sentencing, likely out of pure shame. Umar Farouk Abdul Muttalib, now 25 years old, actually pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit an act of terrorism transcending national boundaries, attempted murder within the special aircraft jurisdiction of the United States, willfully placing a destructive device on an aircraft which was likely to have endangered the safety of the aircraft, attempted use of a weapon of mass destruction, willfully attempting to destroy and wreck a civil aircraft, and 3 counts of possession of a destructive device in furtherance of a crime of violence. It was said that Umar immediately regretted his choice to enter a guilty plea as soon as he realized what he had done. However, it was too late. As a result of his guilty plea, Umar, the underwear bomber, was sentenced to life in prison for the Christmas Day attack. Umar showed very little emotion as the life sentence was handed down. The judge, Nancy Edmonds, said, "The defendant has stated, and it is clear that he has enormous motivation to carry out another terrorist attack. This court has no ability to control the defendant's motivation, which does appear to be unchanged. However, I can control the defendant's opportunity to carry out those actions." Umar said that the real crime here was U.S. foreign policy. Despite accomplishing absolutely nothing, he said, "Today is a victory of God, and God is great. The Mujahideen are proud to kill in the name of God, and that is exactly what God told us to do in the Quran." The Attorney General said, "As this investigation and prosecution have shown, Umar Farouk Abdul Muttalib is a remorseless terrorist who believes that it is his duty to kill Americans. For attempting to take the lives of 289 innocent people, he has been appropriately sentenced to serve every day of the rest of his life in prison. Today's sentence once again underscores the effectiveness of the criminal justice system in both incapacitating terrorists and gathering valuable intelligence from them." The U.S. Attorney, McQuad, said, "On behalf of the victims, we are gratified that this al-Qaeda terrorist has been defeated and will spend the rest of his life in prison, where he can never hurt innocent civilians again. I am very proud of the work of our prosecutors and agents in Detroit. Their work shows that the civilian court system is a valuable mechanism for obtaining intelligence and convicting terrorists with the legal certainty and transparency that instills public confidence in American justice." After the sentencing, Umar's own family came out to make a statement about their son, saying, "We are grateful to God that the unfortunate incident of that day did not result in any injury or death." In 2017, Umar complained that he was being mistreated in prison. He filed a lawsuit in a Denver court, saying that his conditions in prison had left him with no choice but to start hunger strikes only for officers to force him to eat. He complains that he has been put into solitary confinement, that he hasn't been allowed to contact his family, and that officers are discriminating against him for his beliefs. He threatened to start a hunger strike again if he wasn't kept out of solitary confinement. It doesn't seem that this lawsuit ever went anywhere. Umar is currently serving 4 life-term sentences plus 50 years without parole at ADX Florence, which is called a Supermax federal prison in Colorado. He will never be free again. Once again, thank you for watching my video. If you found it interesting, please give it a like, it really helps me out in the algorithm, and hey, feel free to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. A little while ago, I started up a podcast with 4 of my friends. If you like this channel, I think you'll find that interesting too. Give it a look. If you want, go ahead and follow me on social media, because if anything were to ever happen to this channel, that would probably be the only way you'd ever hear about it. I also really appreciate when people follow me on Patreon. There you can get videos early, ad-free, and uncensored. Channel memberships are up too, and you can get the same benefits there as well. This has been your host, Kyle. Thank you, and good night.